Hello everyone, my name is Bethany Saifong and I'll be presenting Taphonomy today. What is taphonomy? Taphonomy is a study of what happens to the body after death, and it focuses on the decaying process and the environmental factors that come into play of, the decaying process. This study in anthropology does have a big role in investigations, particularly in finding evidence. This study in anthropology does play a role in crime investigations, particularly in indoor crime scenes versus outdoor crime scenes, since crime scenes that happened outdoors are more likely to be disrupted by the environment, unless foul play is involved. Which is why it's important to understand what has happened to the body due to Mother Nature herself outside. The term taphonomy was first coined by Russian paleontologist Ivan Efremov as a study of the transition of animal remains from the biosphere to the lithosphere, essentially fossils. By the end of the 20th century, taphonomy became more popularized in anthropology thanks to the pioneering works of a couple of scientists like Hill and Behrensmeyer. Ooh, I butchered that really badly. Each of those men were grappling with how to distinguish early hominin behavioral modification of materials from ecological factors like weathering. Behrensmeyer and Kidwell also brought taphonomy fully into the fold of anthropology and introduced preservation into, the vocabulary. Small warning, as this is going to be a discussion about, murder, but the example I can give about taphonomy is the Green River serial murders. On July 15th, 1982, two youths bicycled across a bridge at the outskirts of Kent, Washington, spotted the body of a woman beneath the river's surface. This marks the first discovery of what would be the 41 victims attributed to the killer, which were believed between 1982 in July to March of 1984. The first 4 victims were recovered from the waters of Green River. The majority were discovered on the land surface as bodies or partial skeletons. Most were scattered heavily, scavenged by the time they were discovered. Post-mortem intervals from date of death to discovery ranged from days to 8 years. All of these murders take place outside, and the compounding features of these scenes were ambiguous parameters, determination of scenes by artifacts of unknown association to the investigation, potential commingling of individuals and animal remains, and the need to recognize bone fragments and subadult elements of the human skeleton. This foreknowledge, combined with a close working relationship between the medical examiner's office and police, ensured that a pathologist and anthropologist would be intimately involved with the investigation from the onset and would be on site when scenes were processed. Paths of approach and egress from the scene were rigorously monitored, as were the number of people allowed into the scene. Investigators undertook hands and knees searches, made inspection of vegetation, and screening of soil from underneath and around the remains. The archaeological and paleontological literature proved invaluable in resolving taphonic issues. A research proposal I have in mind is how decomposition underwater works and how it's different to decomposition on land. The decomposition rate in aquatic environments is usually accepted to be slower due to cooler temperatures and inhibition of insect activity. The process starts immediately after death, and the disarticulation of different body parts proceeds along with it, which were dispersed due to water currents and animal scavengers such as crabs and sea urchins. Haglund, who has extensively studied the disarticulation sequence in aquatic environments, suggested that the mandible, cranium, and hands are the first to be separated, followed by the limbs, and later the trunk, pelvic girdle, and thighs, which the latter of those remain articulated for a longer time. Tissue loss ends up becoming more or less complete within the first month, unless it was contained in tight and heavy clothing like diving suits and boots. The final phases of decomposition or disarticulation, bones become completely defleshed and isolated from each other. It's also worth noting that bones immersed in saltwater can also present alterations, such as bleaching and staining. The occurrence of secondary concretions is more common in underwater and archaeological excavations and forensic recoveries because the concrete formation process takes longer times to develop, while bleaching and staining ensue more rapidly from chemical reactions of bones with the saltwater. Complex interactions between the aquatic environment and the four main diagenic processes of fire erosion, abrasion, crustacean, and dissolution can lead to fragmentation and complete destruction of bones, or can engage the process of fossilization, which would explain why bones have to be handled carefully. Thank you for watching.